Hello, my dear ones, and welcome to online classes. In my last class, I was discussing a beautiful prose. Let me share screen with you all. Yes, here we go. A beautiful prose that is my childhood, which is an extract taken from, the autobiography of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. That is, which is the autobiography written by Abdul Kalam ji? Can you guess it? Yes, Wings of Fire. Wings of Fire is an autobiography written by Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. And this chapter, My Childhood, this is an extract taken from that autobiography. My dear ones, in my last class, we tried to understand what the lesson is all about. I had explained little from it. Today, let me give recap and then continue. In my last class, you learned who is the speaker of this lesson. In this lesson, I mean, who is the speaker? Abdul Kalam himself is a speaker because he begins by using personal pronoun, that is I. I was born into a middle class Tamil family in the island town of Rameshwaram, likewise. So here the speaker is Kalamji himself. He is born in Rameshwaram, which was then in Madras state, and his father was Jainulabdin and his mother Ashiyamma. And then he recalls his childhood, how his house was, how his place, street, and his friends, all of that. My dear ones, yesterday you learned that his house was built by his ancestors in late 19th century house it was, middle of 19th century, I mean. And then it was a large house built, made out of limestone and bricks. All of that you saw in my last class. And it was on the Mosque Street in Rameshwaram, right? My austere father used to avoid all inessential comforts and luxuries. However, all the necessities were provided for in terms of food, medicine, or clothes. In fact, I would say mine was a very secure childhood, both materially and emotionally. My dear ones, from here, let me continue till Rameshwaram, till the house we had discussed in my last class. I had discussed. Let's continue. My austere father, what does this mean? Which means the meaning is given here: simple, strict, and severe. Simple, strict, and severe father Kalamji had, who used to avoid all inessential comforts and luxuries. He did not give unnecessarily, he did not made his children, that is Kalamji and his brothers and sister, to live in utmost comforts and luxuries. Whatever was required, whatever facilities were required to live, those facilities were given by father of Abdul Kalamji, that is Jainuddin. However, all the necessaries were provided for, as I told you, in terms of food, medicine, or clothes. In fact, I would say mine was a very secure childhood, both materially and emotionally. My dear ones, Abdul Kalam says there that whatever was required in terms of food, medicine, or clothes, all such facilities were given. But unnecessary or inessential comforts and luxuries were not given or were avoided. And then he feels that he would love to say, he would say rather that his life was very secure, his childhood was very secure, and both materially and emotionally it was very secure, Kalamji says. Let's see further. The Second World War broke out in 1939 when I was 8 years old. When I was 8 years old, which means when Kalamji was 8 years old, Second World War had broken in 1939. For reasons I have never been able to understand, a sudden demand for tamarind seeds erupted in the market. My dear ones, when this world war broke out in 1939, when Kalamji was just 8 years old, in the market there was sudden broke there was sudden demand for tamarind seeds, and Kalamji could not understand why that demand had already bursted out suddenly. I used to collect the seeds and sell them to the provision shop in on Moss Street. And what Kalamji used to do as an 8 years old boy, he used to collect tamarind seeds and sell them to the provision shop, which was on the Moss Street again, in the same area where his house was situated. A day's collection would fetch me the princely sum of 1 anna. My dear ones, you must understand here. Here, princely sum means generous amount. The actual meaning of princely sum is generous amount. But here it is ironic. Ironic, which means the opposite meaning of what actually the word meaning is of the word. In simple words, ಅಂದ್ರ ಬಹಳ ದೊಡ್ಡದಿತ್ತು, ಬಹಳ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಬಹಳ ಬಹಳ ಸಿಕ್ತ್ರಿಪ್ಪ, ನಮ್ಗೆ ರೊಕ್ಕ ಬಹಳ ಸಿಕ್ತಿತ್ತು, ಎಟ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಒಂದ್ ಆಣೆ ಅಂತ ಹಿಂಗ ಆ ರೀತಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಾವಲ್ಲ ಒಮ್ಮೊಮ್ಮೆ ಇಂಡೈರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಹೇಳೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಏನಂತೇವಿ ಅಪೋಸಿಟ್ ಮೀನಿಂಗ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಆ ವರ್ಡ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, ಇವ್ ಬಹಳ ಶರಣೆ ಅದನ್ರಿ, ಬಹಳ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಬಹಳ ಅದಾನ, ಅದರ ಅರ್ಥ ಬಹಳ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಅದಾನ, ಹಿಂಗ ಆ ರೀತಿ ಪ್ರಿನ್ಸ್ಲಿ ಅಮೌಂಟ್ ಅಂದ್ರ ಬಹಳ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಬರ್ತಿತ್ತು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಕ್ ಟ್ರೈ ಮಾಡ್ಯಾರ ಅಬ್ದುಲ್ ಕಲಾಂ ಅವರು. ಒಂದ್ ಆಣ ಬರ್ತಿತ್ತು ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ, ಈ ಟ್ಯಾಮರಿನ್ ಸೀಡ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಒಂದ್ ಆಣ ಬರ್ತಿತ್ತು. ಒಂದ್ ಆಣೆ ನೀವು ಕೇಳಿರ್ಬೇಕು, 8 ಆಣೆ 4 ಆಣೆ ಕೇಳಿರೋ ನೋಡಿರೋ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ನಾವೆಲ್ಲ ಸಣ್ಣವರಿದ್ದಾಗ ಎಲ್ಲ ಇತ್ತು. ರೀಸೆಂಟ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ನಾಟ್, ಇಟ್ ವಾಸ್ banned. My brother-in-law Jailuddin, please underline and write down. Brother-in-law of Kalamji was Jalaluddin. I'm sorry. Jalaluddin would tell me stories about the war, which I could later attempt to trace in the headlines in Dinamani. Dinamani was a local newspaper, my dear ones. One mark question. There can be 1 mark question on this, which was a local newspaper in the Rameshwaram during the childhood of Kalamji. Dinamani. In this Dinamani newspaper, the stories which were told by brother-in-law Jalaluddin of Kalamji used to appear the next day as the headlines, which means from the war he used to get some collection about the war, information about the war, and he used to make them as stories and tell in front of Kalamji, and which Kalamji used to find as headlines in Dinamani. By this sentence, one can understand Kalamji, being young boy, used to read newspapers. My dear ones, reading newspapers gives you wonderful knowledge. So have the habit of reading newspapers, at least a page daily, at least a page. Our area, being isolated, was completely unaffected by the war. In Rameshwaram, the Moss Street area was isolated, kind of very safe. It was unaffected from the war. But soon India was forced to join the Allied forces, and something like a state of emergency was declared. My dear ones, soon India had to join hands with the Allied forces. What does this mean? In social, you learn that what are Allied forces and what are the other forces? Allied forces means the armies of UK, USA, and Russia during the Second World War. During the Second World War, the countries, certain countries made certain teams kind of to take part in war, supporting each other and trying to suppress enemies. Likewise, allied forces, in this allied force, there were three countries, UK, USA, and Russia, and India had to, support them, not being officially as a member of allied forces. But because the British were ruling India, Indian soldiers had to take part in Second World War. The first casualty came in the form of the suspension of the train halt at Rameswaram station. My dear ones, the first enforcement came in Rameswaram when there was suspension of train halt, which means trains, halting of trains, which means stopping of trains in Rameswaram station was banned. I mean, the trains did not stop at Rameswaram station from that time onwards. The newspapers now had to be bundled and thrown out from the moving train on the Rameswaram road between Rameswaram and Dhanushkodi. It so happened when halting of trains was stopped because of the war, the newspapers which were bought by train to Rameswaram now had to be thrown out. The bundles of the newspaper had to be thrown out from the moving train onto the road between Rameswaram and Dhanushkodi. That forced my cousin Samsuddin, who distributed newspapers in Rameswaram, to look for a helping hand to catch the bundles. And as if naturally, I filled the slot. What happened? My dear ones, when this, this forced the cousin of Kalamji, whose name was Samsuddin, please underline, very important. It made him to, get a helping hand to distribute the bundles. I mean, to catch the bundles from the moving train and to distribute in Rameswaram. Cousin of Kalamji was in search of a helping hand. And naturally, as if it was meant for Kalamji, Kalamji filled in the slot, which means he started to help his cousin Samsuddin in catching the bundle of newspaper and distributing. Samsuddin helped me earn my first wages. His cousin helped him to earn his first salary. Half a century later, I can still feel the surge of pride in earning my own money for the first time. My dear ones, when Kalamji was writing his autobiography, it was a time, it was almost 50 years. That's why he mentions here, half a century later. Half a century later, he can still feel the, that proud feeling which rises within him when he recalls his own money, first earned money, owned for the first time when he owned his own money, when he earned his own money. That great feeling he could still feel, my dear ones. It's always like that. When you do your work on your own, and when the result is good, you feel very great about it. You feel great about it all the time. Whenever you recall such successful works, you feel great about yourself, don't you? In the same manner, Kalamji was feeling about his first salary. Now it's been a long time. He could feel the same feelings till today. Every child is born with some inherited characteristics into a specific socio-economic and emotional environment and trained in certain ways by figures of authority. I inherited honesty and self-discipline from my father. From my father, I inherited faith in goodness and deep kindness, and so did my three brothers and sister. My dear ones, some Kalamji says, child is born with some characters inherited, means carried on from his generation, from his ancestors, the characters. The environment in which the child is taken care of, or the child grows in, matters the most. Likewise, here the honesty and self-discipline was inherited from Abdul Kalam ji from his father. From his father, he inherited these characters, and also the faith in goodness and deep kindness were also the characters inherited by himself, not just himself, not just by him, but by his three brothers and a sister. Remember, all in all, they were five children to his father. I had three close friends in my childhood. Important again, that's why I've underlined Ramananda Shastri, Arvindan, and Shiva Prakashan. These were three childhood friends, close friends of Kalamji. All these boys were from Orthodox Hindu Brahmin family. All these three, interestingly, were from Hindu, Orthodox Hindu Brahmin family. Orthodox, which means very traditional Hindu Brahmin family, these three were. And Kalamji was a Muslim. As children, none of us ever felt any difference among ourselves because our religious differences and upbringing, because of our religious and differences and upbringing. My dear ones, as children, Kalamji and his friends never felt any difference with respect to their religion or religious upbringing, all of that. They were together, they played together, they ate together, they went to school together and to some other places, thinking or just in the mind, they had this thought that all of them are friends. They never thought of their religion because you see, further he explains an incident happened in his school. That's why he mentions about this thing here. You can connect it later. Let me continue. In fact, Ramananda Shastri was the son of Pakshi Lakshmana Shastri, the high priest of the Rameshwaram temple. Later, he took over the priesthood of Rameshwaram temple from his father. Aravindan went into the business of arranging transport for visiting pilgrims, and Shiva Prakashan became a catering contractor for the same Southern Railways. My dear ones, here he explains about the what happened with his close friends. The first person, that is Ramananda Shastri, who was the son of the highest priest of Rameshwaram temple, whose name was Pakshi Lakshmana Shastri. Ramananda Shastri he took over the priesthood of Rameshwaram temple after his father, and Arvindan went into business of arranging transport for visiting pilgrims, for visitors, for tourists, and Shiva Prakashan became a catering contractor, which means supplying food in the Southern Railways. During the annual Sri Sita Rama Kalyanam ceremony, our family used to arrange boats with a special platform for carrying idols of the Lord from the temple to the marriage site situated in the middle of the pond called Ramatirtha, which was near our house. My dear ones, this picture, which you can see here, explains how harmony was in existence in the areas of Kalam's childhood, that is Rameshwaram. Our family used to arrange boats for carrying idols of the Lord from the temple to the marriage site. Every year, a ritual is to take place in Rameshwaram, that is Sita Rama Kalyanam ceremony. And for this Kalyanam ceremony, a boat was arranged from Kalam's family. Remember, Kalam's family was a Muslim family, and this ritual was of Hindu ritual. Still, look at the harmony. The boat is to be arranged by Kalam's family so that the idol of Lord could be carried from the marriage site, I mean, from the temple to the marriage site, which was situated in the middle of Ramatirtha, which was found, which was again near the house of Kalamji. Look at the harmony, my dear ones. There was no, misunderstanding because of religious differences. No, they never had the differences. Events from Ramayana and from the life of the prophet were the bedtime stories of my mother and grandmother would tell the children in our family. In the family of Kalamji, grandmother and mother of Kalamji used to tell the stories from Ramayana and the life of the prophet in during the night. I mean the bedtime stories. Those are called as bedtime stories. What does that mean? Bedtime stories, when children usually go to bed, when they when mother have to make the child or the children to go to sleep, they used to tell stories. And grandmother and mother of Kalamji used to tell the stories, bedtime stories from Ramayana as well from the life of prophet. That was quite common for the children in Kalamji's family. One day, when I was in the fifth standard at the Rameshwaram Elementary School, a new teacher came to our class. I used to wear a cap which marked me as a Muslim, and I always sat in the front row next to Ramananda Shastri, who wore the sacred thread, that Janivara, what we call. The new teacher could not stomach a Hindu priest's son sitting with a Muslim boy. My dear ones, what happened? He recalls an incident from his childhood. There he says, one day what happened? A new teacher came to his school, Kalamji's school. When Kalamji was in fifth standard in Rameshwaram Elementary School, uh, a new teacher had come there. And when new teacher looked at Kalamji, he could understand the Kalamji was Muslim because of his cap. Kalamji was wearing a cap and which marked him as a Muslim, and he was sitting right next to his close friend Ramananda Shastri, who was Brahmin, because he wore a sacred thread, as I told you, the Geneva. But this new teacher could not stomach a Hindu priest's son sitting with a Muslim boy. Could not stomach, meaning could not tolerate, because Hindu sitting next to a Muslim boy was not allowed, not accepted by this new teacher. So what did he do? Did he make them to sit away from each other, or did he make them to stand out from the class? What happened? Let's see in my next class, my childhood lesson. My dear ones, I hope you're able to understand this beautiful story, the prose. If you have any kind of doubts, you can ask me anytime. Let me conclude here itself. I shall conclude here itself. Thank you.